Welcome to another episode of Exercise Matters with me, Randall Cooper.
And me, Mick Hughes.
Support for today's episode comes from Premax Performance Skincare. If you're active, you focus on strength, endurance and recovery. But what about your skin? Sweat, friction and the elements take a toll. That's where Premax comes in. High-performance skincare made for high-performance people. From recovery creams to anti-chafe balms, massage creams to exercise-specific barrier creams, we help your skin go the distance. Keep your skin as fit as your body with Premax. Available now at premax.co.
And support for today's episode also comes from Learn.Physio. Health professionals, are you staying ahead of the game? Learn.Physio brings you cutting-edge education from world-class experts in sports and musculoskeletal medicine. Online courses, hands-on practicals and expert resources, all backed by the latest evidence and designed to fit into your busy schedule. To be your best, learn from the best. Get started today at Learn.Physio. Morning, mate. Happy Monday. Here we are again.
Here we are. And feeling good. As I was telling you just before we came on air, I've been working hard, but I've been managing to get a lot of exercise done. And you might remember, and I'm sure some of the listeners might remember, that back at the end of August last year, I fractured my shoulder blade, and I feel good now. Touch wood. Like I feel like I'm finally kind of back to where I was physically, swimming as much as I want to. Back to lifting what I was lifting in the gym. So it takes a while, huh? It's good 6 months to kind of get back. It's you can't hurry these things.
I think it is really underappreciated how much like a fractured limb can really, it's a significant injury. Like, yes, the bone may heal somewhere between 8 to 12 weeks, depending on how old or young you are and how good your bone is and how good of a blood supply that bone is. But the knock-on effect, when you're fairly immobilised and you can't use that limb to the best of its ability for a good 3 months, that's a lot of loss, muscle loss, cardiovascular fitness loss that takes time. The older we are, it's kind of like, the time spent immobilised or reduced in capacity, double that. And that's kind of where we land with how we will be feeling like back to pre-injury levels. Mrs. Hughes broke her 5th metatarsal the other day. She's 3 weeks.
I saw that. Yeah, I saw that. How's she going?
I'm actually feeling pretty proud of myself because I gave her a fairly good timeline of expectations. And I said, you're going to be pretty sore for the first 7 to 10 days. Like that bone fracture sucks. Nighttime pain sucks, all that kind of stuff. And I said, by probably about week 3 or week 4, you might feel like comfortable touch weight bearing, partial weight bearing, getting around in your boot almost to the day. She's been walking around the house without the crutches, been hobbling around in a moon boot. I've been telling her to bloody put a mountain boot on or some other shoe on the other foot to keep her a little bit more balanced in the hips, but she's not having it. She's all about the nice slides, comfortable slides and pretty footwear. So, but yeah, no, she's doing well. She's a trooper. She's had no endone from day one. She's just been managing with Panadol, just toughing it out, going to work. Just hasn't missed a beat. Yeah, she's a tough one.
And an empathetic husband, I'm sure. So well done to you.
I've earned some very good husband. I've accumulated a hell of a lot of good husband points over the last 3 weeks. So,
well, you want an Aura ring, remember? So,
That's true. That's true. That's coming up.
Yeah.
So as easy as you accumulate them, though, they can get taken away pretty quickly. So I won't get too far ahead of myself. So
they're like frequent flyer points on airlines. Just use them when you get them, and don't let them pile up because sometimes they just all get cancelled.
They just evaporate, don't they? Yeah, that's it. Yeah, they don't roll over into the next year.
Anyway, enough about our marriages. Let's talk shop. And I have to say that, I get excited about every episode of Exercise Matters, Mick, but this one particularly, I feel we don't often get a chance on this podcast to say breaking news, but today I feel like legitimately we can kind of say we've got some breaking news, and it all revolves around a brand new paper that's been published in the journal Medicine and Science in Sports and Exercise. Just this month, we're recording in March here. The episode might go out in April, but definitely this is hot off the press.
Yeah.
It's a position stand. It's a position stand by the American College of Sports Medicine, and it's titled Resistance Training Prescription for Muscle Function, Hypertrophy, and Physical Performance in Healthy Adults, an overview of reviews. So this replaces, they have a pre-existing position stand that was published in Plain. And for those who want to, both of these are free, by the way, up on the internet, so you can just download them at your discretion. But the old one is called Progression Models in Resistance Training for Healthy Adults. That has been pretty much the gold standard in the Bible when it comes to hypertrophy and strength for the last 17 years. Things have moved on. But as they say in the paper, since that was published, there's actually been 30,000 new papers that have been written on strength, hypertrophy, and everything to do with resistance training. So they needed to update it, and they've updated it, and it's just been released. So we're going to talk it through today.
Mate, how exciting. I mean, we've been talking a lot about strength and conditioning and hypertrophy and all the facets of getting strong and building muscle over the last 2 seasons of Exercise Matters, and this season alone we've certainly called in the big guns. So be interesting to hear what you have to say, and if it sits well with what our experts have previously said. I would imagine, the topics we've already covered have been relevant papers. A lot changes between 2009 to 2026. So it's it'd be interesting to hear what the changes are and if it's going to really affect us moving forward.
The authors on it is Stuart Phillips, Professor Stuart Phillips from Canada. And Stuart's actually joining us in a couple of episodes. So I've kind of earmarked to have a chat with him about sarcopenia. So we'll talk to him about that. But we'll see if we've got any questions from today, as well as you and I kind of talk through the results of this study, because if there's anything pressing, he is actually the author on the paper to contact if you've got any inquiries. So
nice.
We've got the right guy to talk about this topic. So yeah, let's get into it, hey?
Mate, very good. This is exciting.
Yep.
Stop holding on. We want the suspense. It's killing me.
So it's what's called an overview of reviews. So basically it's a review of all the systematic reviews and meta-analysis out there. And all the reviews that are included in this paper had to have been randomized controlled studies. The actual reference list of this paper has got over 200 references, and they've included 137 systematic reviews, and which equates to over 30,000 participants. Please. So as part of this, they looked at healthy adults that had completed a resistance training program for at least 6 weeks, and they compared that resistance training program either against a control doing no exercise or a very different resistance training program. So probably the most notable thing, and we need to, I think, kind of acknowledge this straight off the top, is that in most cases, these reviews examine people with minimal or no resistance training experience. So we've got novices. Now, they do kind of explain in the paper that, they have essentially showed that training experience had minimal impact on strength and hypertrophy outcomes. But as you and I know, there is a big difference between a person who has never trained before and never done resistance training or has been missing it in their life for a long time versus very well conditioned athletes. So I think at the start, what I'd like to say is some of the results of this paper may surprise a few people. If you are in the second group and you are a very well trained person who does this, you might want to take a grain of salt with some of these results, because it is generally for people who have not trained. Yeah, as we know, you tend to get amazing results when people haven't trained and they start training again.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's as much as, we like to think everyone that listens to our show are going to be like the more kind of very active elite form of the spectrum. But I think the vast majority of people, knowing just the way our sedentary lives have become and the amount of people that kind of come in and drift in and out. And so you may even have a training background, you might have a training history, but you may know how to lift, but you did that 5 years ago or 10 years ago. So it kind of almost washes away. Yes, you might, like riding a bike. Yes, you may be able to go into the gym and learn how to, you might ease into squats and deadlifts better because you've got some kind of prior recognition of feeling that movement or have done it before. But you can't, in a way, you've lost that tolerance to load and loss of exercise, and your benefits are probably going to be largely the same. It's just that technically you're probably a bit more proficient when it comes to the exercise. So I think this is going to have really wide-reaching claims.
Yeah, it is worth noting also that every paper that's included in this review, they have had to have done at least 6 weeks of training. So when you get into the 6 weeks plus mark, it's more than just neuromuscular activation and basically just firing everything up. We've got next episode you're talking about potentiation and stuff, so that will fit in beautifully with that.
Yep.
But there's a number of outcome measures that have been of interest of this paper. So I'll list them out now. The first one they talk about is the effect of resistance training on strength. Very clear. Like that's what we want to talk about. Hypertrophy, power, muscular endurance, contraction velocity. And also, interestingly, there's actually quite a bit of commentary and they include studies on physical function. And this is probably for the slightly older demographic when they look at gait speed, balance, timed up and go tests, stair climbing and whatever. And I do want to include that because we like to include everyone in all age groups in this podcast. So so let's get into it. Basically, let's spend most of our time talking about strength and hypertrophy because I think they're probably the most two important to this audience. And in my notes, the way I've kind of sectioned this up is I want to answer three questions. What works? What has insufficient data? So what are we not quite sure about? We can't make an assertion one way or the other. And what doesn't work? All right. So we'll kind of go through one after the other. And I'm not going to go into statistics and all that kind of stuff. We're just going to talk broad concepts. So let's talk about strength, improving strength with resistance training. What works? The first is training. Resistance training versus no exercise works. I think we know that one, Mike. It's pretty standard. But this is where I'm going to shock you, Mick. Strength is improved by standard resistance training, including circuit training, elastic bands, home-based programs, and velocity-based training. You want to improve your strength and you don't have access to a gym with weights, you can still get strong. That's what this review says. You know, both of us being physios, we love our elastic band work. And, you know, we've been poo-hooed, I think, you know, for quite a while saying, oh, do your little physio exercises, but, you know, come to the big boys when you're ready. Yep. Well, this review says that the resistance band stuff works in the right situation. So there you go.
There you go. It's there. It's in firm, strong evidence, and bloody strong evidence too. By the way,
yeah, that's right. The second one, and you will love this, Mick, because this is right up your alley, and it was included in the review, is cross education works. So training one limb, doing unilateral exercises on one leg, significantly improves strength on the untrained opposite limb. So for all those people who have got injuries, who aren't necessarily able to train one leg or one arm or whatever as well as they would like, keep working out on the other side. Very high quality evidence to say that it works.
Yeah, very good. And that's why someone very topical at the moment, Lindsay Vonn, and her massive stack at the Winter Games. Seen some videos of her. Yeah. Yep. Training her. I didn't know she must have broken or really injured her right ankle as well. So she obviously shattered her left tibia to bits, and she had a lot of metalwork put in to stabilise that. But I've seen her training her right leg with some kind of ankle, like an ASO brace or a moon boot as well. But I saw her punching out some really significant, heavy loaded, knee extensions, hamstring curls of her right leg. So she's definitely taking advantage of the cross education effect there. So, but yeah, it's such a low hanging fruit. I can't get on my high horse enough and talk about the benefits of that when you're injured.
It's for anyone who's interested in elite athlete rehab, just follow Lindsay because she's done it so many times. She's beaten herself, but she knows what she's doing, and she does it well, and she puts it out publicly as well. So a good case study there. All right, what else works for strength? High loads. We know that lifting heavier weights greater than 80% of 1 RM works, and it does provide a superior dose response. So we've discussed this a number of times on this podcast. If you want to get strong, you do have to lift heavy. Yeah. There is some nuance to that, and we'll go through that in a minute. Frequency is important. So training a minimum of 2 times a week. If you want to get strong, you got to train regularly, 2 times a week or more is what? Volume matters. So performing multiple sets. So 2 to 3 sets per session, is more effective than just doing one single set. So you need to actually do a number of sets. The interesting one here is range of motion. Full range of motion looks like it's more superior than partial range of motion. So I've seen those, and I get very frustrated with seeing the boys, doing leg press with unbelievably heavy weights on the 45-degree slide, and they're only kind of doing like 15 degrees of range. It's like, just why bother? Just go through full range of motion if you want to get strong. Exercise order, we touched on this back in the High Rocks episode as well, is performing priority exercises at the beginning of a training session is effective in helping build strength in for those patterns. So if you want to get strong in a certain area, prioritize those exercises at the start. Don't leave them to the end when you're fatigued and tired. And interestingly, like it comes all the way through this paper is that they talk about the flywheel. There must have been, some really good papers, really good high quality papers about the flywheel have come through. And specifically compared against standard resistance training, flywheel devices enhance strength. Yeah, if you do have access, these tend to be just in performance environments. They don't tend to be in many commercial gyms, but if you have access to a flywheel, there's a lot of evidence actually for it. So go for that. So
that makes sense. It's come along in leaps and bounds since 2009. I don't know. I never sort of grew up knowing what a flywheel was, or a flywheel resistance training, or X-box, K-box, or whatever they're called. There's lots of different terminologies for them, but flywheel training, inertial training. So there'd be a wealth of literature there published, but it makes sense too. Like it's a highly eccentric loaded exercise, so it makes sense that it's going to create a bit more excitement and muscle tissue breakdown over a period of time. So that makes sense to me.
Insufficient data. We're going to move on to now what we just don't kind of know. So it doesn't mean it's bad. It doesn't mean there's no evidence for it. It just means there hasn't been enough high quality studies to include a definitive result in this review. So the first kind of section is specific methods. So insufficient data on Olympic style lifting versus traditional kind of lifting. Nordic hamstring curls, interestingly.
Thanks.
And this is one you won't like, Mick, is blood flow restriction training as well. So there are three things. Insufficient data at the moment. There's also insufficient data on unstable surfaces. So whether you want to train on unstable surface versus a hard, flat surface, they don't know. And also advanced programming. So things like periodization, concurrent training, and intra-session auto-regulation. So intra-session auto-regulation is essentially like you can adjust depending on how you're feeling on the day. So if you're in there and you're just full of beans and feeling awesome and you're lifting great, and you think I can get another 2 reps out or add another 10 kilos to my bench press or whatever, that there's insufficient evidence to say that will work if you kind of go with how you feel. So they're the main things that they found. Not enough data on it for them to make a conclusive comment.
Yeah. Well, once again, that also too, if we think about, remember at the top of the show, this is all pegged at the novice athlete and the novice trainer, the person who hasn't, it's probably hard to call someone an athlete if they're novice, but it's someone that hasn't trained regularly, is maybe joining the gym for the first time or re-establishing themselves back in the gym. So that's where that makes sense to me, is like if you're novice and you're mucking around with blood flow restriction training, you kind of need to ask yourself why. Could you do something a little bit less risky or more suitable and much easier to do without supervision with resistance bands or just traditional lifting? And the same thing with Olympic lifting, same thing with Nordics. If you're undertrained and don't have much of a training history at all, and you're certainly in the novice boat, simple, basic programming as per what we do know, it just seems to be the thing we should be going for. Always make exercise accessible for all, not try and make it sexy and cool and often create barriers for people to engage in it. I think that's what I'm about. And when you start bringing devices in and tools, that's where things get a bit tricky.
Good comment, Mick. And it is one of the main things that I wanted to discuss right at the end, and we'll save a better discussion for it then. But it is probably the most significant part of the paper is that at the end of it, they do say, like, this is all the evidence, but our recommendation as an expert group is for you to still individualize and not to have like a doctrine of, it has to be 3 sets of 10, 3 times a week. Make sure it suits you, your goals and your lifestyle. So, all right. So no significant difference. And this is probably the thing that will surprise most people listening to this podcast. And we're only talking about strength at the moment. We're not talking about hypertrophy or power. You don't need to go to muscle failure. So training to momentary or absolute failure is not necessarily for strength gains. They talk about reps in reserve, and that if you've got 2 or 3 left, you're still going to get strong by that. But there is very much a notion of thought out there that to get strong, you need to go to failure every time. This review says that you do not need to do that. The equipment choice, no difference between machine and free weights. You and I discussed that in a previous episode. Stability of the surface, again, no difference there. Fast versus slow or moderate contractions, and eccentric versus concentric contractions, no difference. But just, again, remember, we're only talking about strength here. It's different we'll talk about power a little bit later. Timing, so there's no difference between training in the morning versus training in the evening, or using fancy like set structures like cluster sets or complex sets or whatever. And the interesting thing, and this is interesting off the back of like when we spoke to Tony as well about rest intervals in your excellent episode, was that for strength, it says, and this is just the results of this review, and I'm only just passing it on, is rest intervals, no difference between short or long rest intervals between sets. Yeah, so less than 1 minute or more than 1 minute. So, you know, again, I think that's probably one of those things where for the untrained population, probably may make sense, does according to this paper. Tony's dealing with a very trained population, and there's definitely papers that support that. So again, that's where some of this kind of, I think, individualisation comes into it. I still think that for a well-trained person, from our discussion the other week, rest intervals is still something people should pay attention to for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah. Just a little teaser and a spoiler alert. When we talk about potentiation in the next episode, we'll talk about how much rest you should be putting in between the kind of conditioning exercise and then the exercise that gives you the little boost of power or speed or whatever it is we're looking at. So yeah, stay tuned for that one.
Yep. All right, let's move on to hypertrophy. So
hypertrophy, make those muscles big, strut around the gym. That's
big,
it. Let's go.
jacked, thick, however you want to kind of say it. But if you do want to increase the size of your muscles, as most people know, the training alters slightly from doing strength training. There is overlap. And this is the results of the paper again for hypertrophy now. What works? Well, resistance training works. We know that.
Surprise.
Yeah, compared to no exercise. Yeah, that one's a no-brainer, but the study obviously backs it up. Interestingly, like alternative methods again, so circuit-based classes, resistance band training, effective for hypertrophy. Yep. You can get bigger muscles. You don't have to go into a commercial gym to get bigger muscles. If you're doing Mr. Olympia, maybe not. But again, for this population, you can, and I think that's a really good kind of takeaway message for a lot of people, is because people get very stressed if they go on holiday or they, have to travel for work, or, their gym, they live a long way from a gym or something along those lines. It's like, I can't get strong, I don't have access to it. No, you can. The evidence says that even if you just get, some light resistance bands and take them everywhere with you, you can still do a good program and achieve your goals.
Yep, that's right.
Hypertrophy is enhanced by higher weekly volumes, specifically greater than 10 sets per muscle group per week. So we know that you need to get big muscles, you need to do a lot of work. So 10 sets is kind of where they landed with the paper. And talking about contraction type, muscle size is positively affected by the type of contraction, specifically eccentric only contractions or eccentric overload. So it's the down component of a lot of the exercises that will build muscle size. So if you're doing your standard bicep curl, you can get it up, but don't just drop it down as fast as you want. If you want big biceps, make sure you're really controlling the motion back down towards the floor. So they're the few things that have got really solid evidence behind them for hypertrophy, Mick.
Oh, nice.
Yep.
That's all good. You might be getting into it. Any sets and reps and loading, is that coming, or any mention of that?
No. And they don't mention it really. And that's a very big deviation from the 2009 paper, is that you remember, it's like, if you want strength, you've got to do less than 6 reps. And if you're going to do hypertrophy, you've got to do this and whatever. They've moved away from it completely because, and I will kind of, yeah. So, I'm just kind of scrolling through my notes here, because for hypertrophy, the load, you can get bigger muscles by training from 30% to 70 or to 100% of 1 RM. So you can go down to 3 out of 10, basically, as long as you're getting the volume in and you're going pretty close to failure. You don't have to fail. But if you're going pretty close to failure with light weights, you can get bigger. So super important kind of point. All right, insufficient.
Putting the volume in.
Yeah, that's it. All right, just insufficient data. I'll kind of just roll through these as a bit of a group. Insufficient data on machine versus free weights, single versus multi-joint exercises. The time of day doesn't seem to have any solid evidence behind it. And also the range of motion, specific set structures like drop sets and cluster sets and whatever, again, insufficient data for that. And concurrent training as well. insufficient data on the mixing of basically aerobic and strength work for hypertrophy, different for strength as we discussed in a previous episode. No significant difference. So these are the things that they found have made no difference. Load and intensity. So training with low loads, like I said before, 30% of 1 RM versus high loads, 100% of 1 RM results in similar hypertrophy.
Yeah,
So,
wow. Awesome.
yeah, Eric Helms, touched on this the other week when we spoke to him about that as well. So again, to get big muscles, you don't need to lift super heavy. Trailing to absolute momentary failure does not provide superior benefit for muscle size. We've kind of discussed that one as well. Frequency, if total weekly volume is the same, training 1 day per week is effective as training 5 days a week. So it doesn't matter really to get bigger muscles, whether you're kind of all cramming it into one muscle group on 1 day or whether you're spreading it out, as long as you're getting the volume in and addressing all the factors that we've just discussed, then that will work for you.
Nice.
Repetition speed, fast versus slow, time under tension, exercise order, power, training techniques do not change hypertrophy. So don't worry about those. And then another thing, again, just reinforcing what we discussed a few episodes ago, is that there doesn't seem to be much benefit in periodization, in blood flow restriction training, and variable loading during repetitions. So increasing or decreasing weights as you go along as well. So a lot of those things that I think that pop up on social media as the golden kind of ticket to getting big just don't have the evidence behind it, according to this paper.
Awesome. These are really fascinating. I guess recommend, like basically synthesizing all the, what'd you say, plus 200 references in this sort of review of reviews.
107 papers were included in the review, but the reference list is over 200 for this.
And so over 30,000 participants over a number of years. And that's just, that's such a big body of work here to really be able to, a lot of other trials we talked about, there's been as little as, 10 participants or 15, and, we're making big, bold claims based on what we're saying in just 15 individuals or 20. To have 30,000 people over the last 17 years, let alone what was being done beforehand, this is just such a big body of work and a very strong number of individuals to make these, claims. This isn't sort of done very lightly. And so, to hear these changes since 2009 that have really seemingly not lowered. I don't feel like this has lowered the bar at all, because evidence is what evidence is. This is the findings of the results synthesized. But what it has done seemingly for people who are looking to build muscle, who haven't been to the gym before, who are a novice, it's kind of really lowered the stress or the expectation of what they need to do to achieve that goal. That's in as little as 6 weeks. You can have some pretty amazing results from both a strength perspective and hypertrophy perspective with just resistance bands at home. If you'd like to go into the gym, then you don't have to be overcomplicated and too creative in the gym. Just sort of go and do, if you want hypertrophy, these are your parameters here. If you want strength, these are your parameters here. This is just setting up some really nice guidance and guidelines for people just to probably enter into the gym in a less complicated way. So I really love these changes, and well done to the author team for putting this one together.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's move on to power, and I'll just kind of go through a few key points. I'm not going to go through it as deep as what we did for strength and hypertrophy, but for power, to improve power, moderate loads are optimal. Somewhere between about 30 and 70% of 1 RM seem to be the sweet spot, but you have to move at maximal speed. So it's all about kind of the quickness of movement. The volume needs to be low to moderate. So somewhere around, they think that 24 repetitions of a power-based exercise is the ceiling. So do less than 24 and utilize specialized equipment. So they talk about the flywheel again. So the flywheel kind of comes into it, but that makes a lot of sense because you're jumping up and down against the eccentric resistance, and including explosive movements such as Olympic lifts. And this is where we spoke about Olympic lifts in strength. Doesn't seem to have a big difference versus traditional resistance training. For power, it does. All right. So if you want power, particularly with legs, for instance, for a basketball or a footballer or something, you want to get more powerful, do some Olympic lifts. and you see a lot of high-level performance athletes doing Olympic lifts. So do that for that, but don't do it just for strength as on its own. That's about it. That's about it for power. Any comments on power?
Nice. Only that, I guess, for a novice, power wouldn't necessarily, I can't imagine too many people, well, I certainly wouldn't recommend power training for a novice without laying a foundation of either hypertrophy or strength first. So I think that would be just the careful takeaway there for any, health professional or, people, everyday person listening in and sort of saying, oh, okay, I just want to go from doing nothing to all of a sudden saying, oh, I want to make myself jump higher without no training, without any strength or hypertrophy foundation. It's just kind of a recipe for disaster. But once you've got that kind of foundation in you, that's where, moving on to power, yes, you might have lifted for the last 12 weeks and got good strength gain, hypertrophy and strength gains, but you're still a novice when it comes to power. So that would be just a little slight, I guess, nuance there and takeaway from me.
Good comment. All right, there's a few things just to kind of close it all out. And again, if you want to dig into it a little bit deeper, just read the paper yourself. It's a pretty easy read, actually. Muscular endurance, resistance training improves muscular endurance, but it is insufficient data for them to understand the amount of load to be used, the volume, the set structure, unstable surfaces versus stable surfaces. We don't know whether that works or not, but you want to get muscles that work under endurance, then strength training will improve that. And these are a few things now for more of the older population. So gait speed, how fast you walk, resistance training improves your gait speed. So if you're walking slow, do some resistance training, you walk faster. That also includes the timed up and go test and also the chair stand test. That's a battery that's used in the older populations to make sure they can stay independent. Balance, resistance training actually improves balance compared to control groups. So I think that's really important for the older group as well. And also stair climbing as well. Walking performance, I like the 6-minute walk test, only improved actually after doing power training. So not just strength test. Which I thought was an interesting one. And also kind of following on from that, they looked at running performance as well. And that was only improved uniquely by velocity-based resistance training rather than just standard resistance training as well. And when we spoke to Dave, remember a few episodes ago, he kind of mentioned along similar lines as well. Jumping performance is improved by a centric flywheel and velocity-based resistance training compared to no exercise or standard resistance training as well. So that's no surprise to you and me. Contraction velocity, so how fast your muscles can actually fire and turn on. Resistance training improves that as well. And then the last one, just to kind of reach it, or the last one I should say, just to kind of close out as far as all the categories go, was agility. Now, I'm not going to give you the results, Mick. Would you say that, what's your gut feeling that with agility, would it be improved by resistance training or not?
I've got a feeling, I'm going to say.
You're on fire today, mate. Insufficient data. So, so there you go. Kind of makes sense, doesn't it? I did think about whether the plyometrics and the quick stuff would actually kind of improve it, but not according to this. All right. So I think that the paper will create a lot of discussion.
There'll be a lot of people probably pissed off with some of this, or get on their high horse and say this is just insufficient, or they'll have their own strong opinions, and that's fine. Like they probably got some understanding, and they may work with certain populations that achieve certain results. But from a broad, once again, this is a broad look at different populations, different ages, different sexes, 30,000 people all around the world. So yes, you might see things specifically in your cohort of people that you train, but remembering this is a novice group of men and women from all around the world of different age groups.
Mainly, that's right. A few key things I'm going to take out of it. Like clearly the volume and versus intensity for hypertrophy is something that I think will surprise a lot of people. And I also think that, not going to failure will surprise a lot of people as well. But I think that probably the most two important takeaways, and also the difference from the 2009 paper, was that non-traditional, in inverted commas, resistance training is valid. And that, again, I kind of said it before, I don't know if I can reword it any differently, but, you don't have to go to the gym and lift weights to get strong or to get bigger muscles. You can do it a number of ways, and this paper demonstrates that.
Yep, I like that. I would say just the only thing about you don't have to train to failure, but if you're only training 5 reps when you could probably easily get 20 reps with that weight, well, that's obviously just to be sensible with what you determine to failure is, or near failure. Yes, you may not want to go to absolute exhaustion, but you also too need to give yourself a little bit of a push with some internal motivation or intrinsic motivation to get as close as you can to that failure point. You don't want to be leaving yourself with 15 or 20 reps left in the tank and wonder why you're not getting the results that you desire.
Yeah, exactly. And just moving on another step from that is that individualism works. We can see that like various forms of resistance training can get the desired result. So I think that it's very different, from a lot of position stands in their previous one. It's like, you've got to do this exactly, and everyone does that exactly. I think that now they've kind of acknowledged that there's quite a number of things that it can work for you. Pick your poison. Whatever you want to do is, as long as it kind of fits in with what's all been mentioned in the last, 35, 40 minutes or so, it will work for you, particularly if you're just regular and keep it going.
Yeah. No, that's excellent. This is a nice, refreshing and contemporary take on resistance training to improve our hypertrophy, strength, power, muscle endurance. So, good job.
No worries. So just to repeat the paper, if people want to find it online, it's the American College of Sports Medicine Position Stand, Resistance Training Prescription for Muscle Function, Hypertrophy and Physical Performance in Healthy Adults, an overview of reviews. It's by Currier and colleagues and published in Medicine and Science in Sport and Exercise this year in 2026. So Mick, thanks for joining me on the journey of it's the first time ever on this podcast that we've just done one paper, but I thought it was big enough kind of drop, for a better expression, to kind of just focus on the one and the one only. So hopefully people get something out of it.
We've got the hot off the press. We're covering new territory. This is an exciting evolution of the Exercise Matters podcast. Who knows what's going to happen next, mate? It's been a wonderful episode. I loved it.
Excellent. I'm enjoying it too. All right, that's a wrap for Exercise Matters. If you enjoyed the chat, make sure you subscribe, leave a review and share it with your mates. A quick disclaimer, this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not medical or individual advice. Always seek guidance from a qualified health professional for your specific needs. Big thanks to our sponsors, Premax, High Performance Skincare for high performance people, and Learn.physio, world-class education for health professionals. Catch you next time.
See you next time.